distracting.
It's not distracting. Okay, good.
No.
Well, let's just get started. I apologize to everyone if my leaf blower, it's not even mine, it's my neighbor's, but it doesn't matter either way. We're all entitled to blow our leaves, but yes, it is not maybe well timed with the talk. Welcome. We are so excited that you are here. I am so excited for this talk too. This is back to work. This is all things transitioning back out of postpartum into the workforce, which can happen at any time. But we are really excited that you are here. We are each going to introduce ourselves, my fabulous co-panelists. I'm Marielle Benjamin. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been working with children and families for the last 20 years. I have 2 kids. I am out of the postpartum period for my 9-year-old and my 12-year-old. And I am the VP of Content and Community at Cooper. I'm going to tell you about Cooper while I have you here. If you do not know Cooper and you're new to this audience, we are your parenting home base. We have monthly parenting groups where parents meet together to learn about their child's development and growth. We do one-on-ones about every single issue you could ever think about with your kids, anything that's going on, the joys, the highs, the lows, all things in between. We have a curated chat that meets 24 hours a day and is giving parenting information at all times, and lots of other resources and access. So if you are in this journey feeling like you don't have your village, we are happy to be your village. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jenny to introduce herself and Leche.
Yes, thank you. So Leche is a freeze drying service for breast milk. So we take your breast milk, your hard-earned breast milk, and turn it into a shelf-stable powder. Beyond just the service, we started the company, myself and Trish, as you see, she's the lovely lady on the right there in our joint picture. We started the service as breastfeeding moms. We were the first customers of Leche. Both she and I had so much milk and were sort of unprepared to go back into the workforce with, rotating all of our freezer stashes and everything else, that we decided to come up with an option for us and just realize that it was something that fit the needs of so many other parents in the marketplace. And so as the first customers, we really wanted to create a brand that offered parents greater flexibility and greater convenience on their feeding journey, whether they were exclusively breastfeeding, exclusively pumping, combo feeding, whatever combination they were, working on with their breastfeeding or on their feeding journey, we really wanted to support them. So Leche is here to do that and to obviously chat about all of these, interesting things that we need to think about going back into the workplace once, that precious time at home with your little one ends. But also, one thing I think we want to cover today too is a topic that I think is close to all of our hearts here. But if you're going back to work in the home, how can we set up some parameters for that too? So that's a little bit about Leche and sort of what we're going to contribute to the conversation. But excited to chat.
Yay! And Maddie.
Hi, guys. I am Maddie. I am the Vice President of Business Development and Strategic Relations here at Emulait. I am a mum of technically 2. I have a 2-year-old and I'm cooking a second one as we speak. So I will be going through this postpartum journey and transitioning back to work for a second time round, and just so grateful for what I've learned after being in this space as well, even being able to incorporate Cooper and Leche into that experience will be phenomenal with all the tools I've learned. So I'm very excited to have my second back to work journey. A little bit about us. Emulait is the first biomimetic bottle to replicate a woman's breast. We stay clear of all gimmicks. This is really based on scholarly level science and research, and there is so many elements to this bottle, which we can chat about later, that make it like breast, from the elasticity and stretch to the texture, the 3D skin printed on the nipple. It comes in 5 different shapes and 5 different shades, which you can scan in our app to get a bottle that is truly matched to your anatomy. This is just really fundamental when transitioning back to work because, as many of you moms know, I'm sure, it isn't that easy to just give your baby a bottle and head off right to work. Doesn't always work out that way. It's not always a smooth journey. So really with Emulait, you can have the peace of mind that not only are you going to give your baby something that hopefully they will take, as it is really close to breast, but it's also something that's going to provide your baby with the developmental benefits, the strengthening of their jaw muscles, the same oral development that they're getting while breastfeeding, while you're away from them, not able to breastfeed. And we have an app that's really great as well for moms who are going back to work, especially because of the visibility you're able to get from this app while you're at work. Anytime a caregiver or anyone in your village is looking after your baby, you're notified. So, as a pumping mom, if you're pumping at work, you'll be able to time those feeds amazingly when your baby's getting feeds without being that helicopter mom texting your nanny, have they slept yet? Have they done this? When did they last eat? You have that full visibility without the need to check in all the time. So that is how Emulate can help, and I'm really excited to delve into this topic more with you guys.
Yay. Well, I'm thrilled, as I've said to both Jenny and Maddie, these are brands that I wish I had had available when I had my children. But what I think is really exciting is that we are all brands that really meet moms where they are, and not about trying to be somebody that you're not, or trying to do something that is, popular for whatever reason, but something that feels authentic and really where your experience is. So I really love that. And I think a great place to start is just how your identity shifts when you become a parent. We have incredible science about the transition that you go through physiologically, emotionally, psychologically, in your relationships with your partners, with your friends, what that transition really looks like. And I think we can all relate to the term mother load, to the way that your everything from your worries to the things that you just generally want to talk about to what you obsess about shifts to that focus of finding your new identity. And I think this return to work is one of those really interesting pivotal moments in a mom's particularly life, but a parent's life, where you have to blend that new identity that you've been working on adjusting. I know that the ladies here will agree with me, that feeling where you're like, wait, you belong to me? Like, I passed myself in a mirror and I saw myself holding my first daughter, and I had this moment being like, oh my God, that's me, and that's a real baby, and that's my life now. Like, that mental picture did not align with who I thought I was, right? And now I'm going back to work and I have to make room for another mental picture, which is this person who is both that mom and somebody out in the workforce doing something different and trying to have an adult life, right? And so that blend and that shift can be really wonderful, but also really difficult. And so I think we just want to start by honoring that moment. In terms of brain science that supports that, we have so much data to show that this is a really unique time in an adult brain where you are open and receptive to learning in a way you have not been since you were a toddler or a teenager, right? Really incredibly, when we look at periods of growth in a brain, to say like, wow, I'm actually open to the fact that I know nothing about this experience and to learning from it. And that makes you really receptive to information that's out there and really able to use all of those great executive function skills that you worked on for 20 or 30 or 40 years or however many years before you became a parent to like get you through this moment in time. So we want to tell you, you are equipped to meet all of these challenges, even if they feel overwhelming, and really embrace this new identity, which we want to sort of help support.
And Marielle, can I jump in there for a
Oh,
second?
yes, please.
I think one of the coolest things, both that I saw, at least for me, and that I see in other people who I work with or who work for us, is that really nobody does it better than moms. So I think like one thing I wanted to just impart on anybody who's joining or listening in later is really this newfound confidence you have in coming into motherhood or parenthood. A lot of times, we get up and we're dealing with so many different things on so many different levels, mentally, physically, emotionally, that a lot of people don't even encounter until, 10:30, 11 a.m. But already make the show I've already had literally a negotiation with my toddler about which banana they're going to have and what outfits they aren't going to wear, and all these little things that sort of add up that I think build this almost like CEO level type skill that moms are like thrust into this new role, owning like an entire organization, right? And a lot of times we don't give ourselves enough credit for how much that really applies to the workplace. You don't oftentimes get to put motherhood on your resume, but it is, moms are problem solvers, they're keen negotiators, they're, people who are leading with heart and looking at like the emotional factors and all of these decisions. So I think if there's one thing I can like just say to moms like entering this phase, while it can feel really intimidating, you now have a whole new skill set that you didn't have before. And so I think it's just such an amazing thing to empower and equip moms with, to say like, this is the new you and it's better. And embrace that and take that into the workplace, whether that's, a new job or working from home or continuing with something that you have all along.
It's so true. And it's why if you need something to get done, you ask the
I
working
was
mom.
about to say,
Figure it out.
they always say, give it to the busiest person. Who's busier than a mom?
That's right.
No one.
Nobody's busier. Nobody's busier. And this is, if I can give you one piece of advice that you guys have to remember for, if you're in the postpartum period, you might have to remember for 5 years. But let me tell you, if you make direct eye contact with anyone asking for volunteers ever, you're going to get chosen because you are so capable. You're going to be chosen as the volunteer for anything. So if you don't want to volunteer, you might have to hide. Okay. But otherwise, you are so competent. As Jenny said, you are so capable, you are going to get chosen to volunteer. So, yeah, that it's a great place to start. I feel like we're going to make this not feel negative, but if you're out there and you are here right now or listening later on and you feel like, but I'm lonely and this feels harder than it should be, that's what these brands are about. Is that our whole mission is to say, it doesn't need to be this hard. You do have people out there who support you and see you where you are. It won't surprise anybody that in a recent survey of parents, over 8,000 moms and dads from in that first year of life, that 32% of parents said they feel lonely and isolated. That a lot of us feel like we want to go back to work. We want to find other things to stimulate us because some of this parenting journey feels so alone. That we need support across all different types of practical, like we need product recommendations and we need help with childcare and we need to hear advice from other moms, and also we need conversations that are about other things and stimulation that is about something else than our child. And so that combination can feel really lonely. And there's a million factors that go into that I'm sure everybody's aware of, but we are at a time where although we have so much that unites us, it's very hard for us to figure out how to access other parents well, how to talk about these issues in our workplace, how to say like, you know what, I'm going to be pumping and I need a private place to do that. Or I need to think about something like working 4 days in office and having a day at home, or I want to come in later or leave earlier, or all of these kinds of accommodations that we know that we're not alone in making, but can feel very hard and isolating to get over that first hump. So we just want to acknowledge that with the understanding that there's also a lot we can do to help ourselves, right? And we're all about true self-care, not the like, if getting your nails done feels true self-care to you, then I support you also in that. But also just finding the stuff that really feeds your soul and makes it possible for you to get through the day in a way that feels meaningful. We know that working parents have additional struggles because of balance. People ask me all the time. And in fact, we have a whole session at Cooper about work-life balance and how nothing exists, right? I think when you try to think about how you will do it all, you're up against some really serious challenges like your childcare, the constant on, right? There's no off. Whether you work in the space like we do, talking about children all day long, or you're just talking about anything else and then going home to children, you're never off. And we know that there is a lot of stress inherent with this whole parenting journey and also with parenting and going back to work. So you definitely have the challenges that you're facing. And again, how can we make all of that easier? And how can we kind of think through what the best ways are to tackle that and our best mindset to be able to do it? We, as the country, score the lowest on parental satisfaction. We have the least amount of support in our workplace, something that we are at Cooper, and I know my fellow brands constantly committed to working on, which is getting more parental support, better parental leave, thinking through what else businesses should be required to do to support moms who are trying to go back to work while doing all of that. One of the things that I think is really interesting when we look through the data is like our expectations of ourselves have changed. To Jenny's point that we can do it all, we also expect ourselves to do it all, which is not entirely fair. And we set ourselves up for that sort of feeling of disappointment when we can't do it all. And I think part of that is just that we get overwhelmed and we don't think that that is part of what the job description is. So we're here to tell you that feeling overwhelmed, I like to say, feeling like you're doing 60% in every bucket is great. 60% is really awesome. So we want to celebrate those wins, and we want to recognize that not all stress and that feeling isn't always bad, right? So that there are a lot of ways that we use stress to our advantage, and we thrive off of stress. If you're a type A person, you have been thriving off of stress since the day you were born, right? And what does that look like? So just sort of talk through some of that. Oh, our stress response, I guess I'm going to do that one and come back. So stress is really increased by how that relationship is going on with your child. So thinking through, do you have a child with a difficult temperament? Do you have a child with special needs? Do you have limited support or more isolation? Are there other environmental factors? Do you face discrimination? And then everybody on this talk who has a child under age 5. You all fit into the increased stress bucket. And we've seen an increase in that stress decade after decade in the last 50 or so years that we've been really looking at parental stress as an outcome. And again, there's the demands we've put on ourselves, there's the demands the rest of the world has put on us, and there's more isolation for moms than when we were raising our children together as a village. I know my fellow moms know a thing or two about parenting stress. Anything you guys want to add in about stress in particular? That we all have it?
It exists. It's there. It's always there. And I think as well, it's hard when you're someone who is naturally, like you said, very type A driven by stress to then navigate adding a baby into that picture and then returning back to work. So
Absolutely.
it's like double whammy stress and different types of stress about different things and balancing that pressure. I think having grace on yourself is so critical. And people, to Jenny's point, you deal with so much before 9 a.m., before the workday even begins. You can be up all night feeding a baby every 2 hours, and you're supposed to jump on a call at 9 and just be fresh and bubbly like the rest of your colleagues who maybe aren't going through that or dealing with that postpartum period. And there just is this expectation that you perform, and you need to have grace on yourself. If someone were to go out the night before and have no sleep and go out partying, and they would be a wreck on that call. So the fact that we have to do that constantly and juggle our children sleeping and getting up multiple times in the night while they are so young, I think it's really hard, and it can also add to the stress when you're sleep deprived. And just having grace on yourself and understanding that you don't need to have that heightened stress necessarily at all times about everything is really probably the key to trying to find the balance.
Yeah, I think something for me as a mom that has helped in recent years, it wasn't this way, like, immediately, but you have these certain expectations. You see things on social media or in movies or in shows about how perfect, family life is, or how perfect motherhood is. And it's not. On a day-to-day basis, it's a grind. You really have to find the little moments of joy that keep you going in this. It's a role that you play the rest of your life. So finding the moments that like really do bring you joy, I think help balance that stress in a way that like the reward is so much greater than you had before, right? But there's also this idea that nothing is really more important than this job. You are a mom, and you're a parent, and like that's a whole new job that's placed on you. So trying to figure out this like work life balance when something feels more like like this job as a mom, like what's supposed to be more important. It's so hard to explain to an employer, like, this is like my priority, right? And so how can we make this work? How can we set boundaries? How can we sort of release some expectations that were, maybe formerly in place, or like expectations of what the world looks like after going back to work? Because I think then it makes those moments of joy and the high points so much more like reachable and touchable, and then
Yeah.
kind of fall into place a little bit better too.
It's so true. It's so true. And I should have mentioned at the top, but please put questions in chat or the Q&A or anything you want to use. If there's questions along the way, we're happy to be interrupted. But I think all of that is it's so important to be in touch and aware of that stress. So you can also tell yourself that not all stress is bad, right? So it's really important to remember that your stress is natural. It's your normal response. I like to always tell people, like, there's a biological reason for stress, right? So when there was a saber-toothed tiger about to eat you, your body needed to make really fast decisions. And that fight, flight, or freeze response, which is that first flood of your amygdala, right, getting all emotion, is important, right? Because if you needed to run, you really need to run. And if you need to respond to the crying of your baby, you need your body to be alerted to that cry uniquely than any other sound in the world. Like, how cool is that, right? We're really built to respond to stress in a meaningful, important way. And so when you think of that, like, and then that recovery, that's your normal positive stress. That's like someone doesn't do something you liked, you feel disappointed, your coffee place was closed on the way to your office and that ruined your whole commute, and there was traffic, and like the normal stress of life. And we see that though you have that spike in cortisol, you recover really well and you move on. And every time you do that, you actually increase your ability to handle stress, right? So that's the kind of good stress. And as your child gets older, we really, and I know that this is because, you work in child development, you can't help but fast forwarding to all the things that are going to come, but you want to make sure your kids have that positive stress, that they know that they can recover from that normal amount of stress. And then you look at something a little bit more severe, something happens that is really unfortunate and that you wish couldn't happen. And, maybe it's something like a grandparent dies or a pet dies, or there is an issue somewhere in the world that feels like it's more significant, because there's just so many issues in all of our lives. And we look at what makes that stress tolerable: the presence of a loving, supportive caregiver. So your relationship with your child, those moments of joy, like everybody was talking about, makes it possible for you to take something that could be toxic for you and make it tolerable, because it's buffered and supported by that relationship. So when you think of that for your children too, things that are going to come up in the world, when filtered through that relationship of having you, become possible and tolerable for them to manage. And then, of course, there's the toxic bubble, which none of us want to have our children in or for us to be in, which is that prolonged chronic stress where we don't get that recovery, where it feels like, and there are days like this with parenting where we all felt like I didn't get one single moment today where I wasn't feeling consumed by stress. And that's where we want to say, like, okay, now we need to lean on those relationships we know we have, or now we need to walk away and take a second to recover, because we want our body to have those peaks and then those valleys where they recover in between. And when we're in that moment of intense stress, when we can say to ourselves, like, this is okay, this is my body responding to a threat that I perceive, and I'm going to get through it. We have so much research about anxiety. One of the best ways to deal with anxiety is to accept that you have it. There's nothing worse than saying, like, I'm going to be killer in all those meetings tomorrow. I'm going to like get myself breastfed, packed, diaper bag, dressed out at that meeting, and it's going to go so well. And then you get halfway through it and you're like, everything's falling apart. This is the worst day I ever had. I don't know how to do everything. If you instead say, wait, oh, this is my normal. This is the normal.
Yeah.
Something didn't go right. This one wasn't, I forgot about this. I didn't prepare for that. And you know what? This is my normal and it's okay. I know how to get through my normal. Your stress response will come way down, because it's like, it was this supposed to have. Some people
Yeah.
like to talk about welcoming it like a friendly visitor. Have you guys heard that, where you're like, come on in for coffee, stress? I knew you were going to be here. Like, it's okay. I can
You had
accept
to
you.
come up at some point today.
That's right.
Thank you.
You had to come. So this is your moment. Like, have a cappuccino and then like I'll be able to move on with you. But it really can make a huge difference. Just again, to just change that mindset about stress to not be your enemy. Like, it's never going to be the
I
smooth
love
moment.
that.
If I
I
have to be
think
the first one.
I think we need to normalize stress. I think this expectation of a perfect stress-free work environment and home environment is never going to happen. So I love that we can obviously reinforce that there is positive and tolerable stress, and like knowing that those exist and are okay is totally fine, because what contributes to stress is people trying to have a stress-free environment, because that's never going to happen. Like
So true.
you're never going to have a stress-free environment. So as
Right.
long as you're realistic with what your life is, and things that are out of your control, maybe work stress is something that you can manage. You can say, I'm not going to choose to let that affect me today. Home stress and things that are happening with your family, that's something that is always going to be consistent, especially with a baby and a new baby, and this transitional period. So knowing that that exists, how can I now use my tools to manage the ones that maybe aren't necessary? Maybe
Exactly.
they're going to just add to it. So I love this though.
I think that it contributes to this idea of like, bandwidth. Like when you become a mother or parent, your bandwidth changes. It has to. And I think it's an incredible thing that happens. But also we should acknowledge it in a way that's like, when you open up that bandwidth, you also open up everything, everything to come flooding in, good and bad, right? So good stress, bad stress, all of these different things. So it's, I realized it with both my kids. Like everyone's like, how are you able to get all this stuff done with, work and family and kids? And it's just like, I don't know. You just do, and you figure out what the priority is, but without those stressors kind of indicating what that is. Like the most important thing right now is for us to have this moment as a family together, and for me to like turn off work alerts or whatever, or this is high priority at work, I have to get this done in order for me to have that quality time with my family. So it's like being able to be in that decision making mode where you're able to tell what the priority is, use that feedback from that stress cycle or loop, and really make the best decisions for you in the moment, for you, your family, your baby, and for work.
Yeah. So true. So true. And one thing I think we want to talk about is like when that stress is too much for you, we have to acknowledge that that has an impact on our babies and on our
Mhm.
relationships. And like that is the reason when I talk to new moms and I say, like, you might need more support, you might need more help. One of the reasons I can convince them to do it is not for themselves, because moms never want anything for themselves, but for the benefit of their children. So it's important to just be aware of that, because as Jenny said, if shutting off the work alerts is the thing that helps you value that connection, you want to be aware of that, because the stress of what those work alerts and those beeps, or honestly, your social media account or whatever it is that brings that little spike where you start getting nervous, can undermine your connection, right? We can miss cues that our children are trying to give us. We can be less responsive and less aware and less sensitive because we're so distracted by something else. And it can be harder for us. Like, I know on a stress day, I yell at my children more than I would yell at them other days. Absolutely, I do, because I am more sort of fried, right? I'm at that edge where my nerve endings feel exposed, and I'm likely to lead with my fight, flight, or freeze response as opposed to my prefrontal cortex and my higher order thinking. So, in those moments where you're like, today was a really bad day, I didn't do what I meant and wanted to do to show up for my family because I was stressed, that's when you sort of want to say, like, okay, now I understand it. Now I see what that's like. And I can sort of begin to take that apart. Take it
Yeah.
out on your partners. They're a great person to take out all your stress on.
They're fine. I think as well, because there is such a fleeting short moment when your children are babies and toddlers, like having an understanding that they can take priority over work for this period until they are older, until they can entertain themselves and they can understand what a work life balance consists of, is also important. When they're young, it really is their time.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get easier. I'm just going to tell you, with older kids, it really does not get easier to say,
Right.
I'm not available and I'm available. And, I think we're going to talk a little bit about setting boundaries, but, it's a tough thing to do, to even try to protect yourself with that. But it's always good to just be in touch with whether that's showing up with your parenting and what that feels like and looks like for you. We're going to go a little quickly. I know that we definitely want to leave time for questions, but I think we want to just make to the point that Maddie was making about, like, it always looks like it's supposed to be so easy. I just want to do a quick inventory, for you guys out there, to take a second and know that none of these statements are true, right? Our children, and whether they have colic and how much they cry and if they're a good breastfeeder or if they are this, or none of that is a reflection of your parenting. right?
Right.
That's just, it's not how it works. You can't like A plus B equals C to your children, and your outcomes are not guaranteed. If you say, I'm doing all of this because I know that they're going to read better in third grade, no, nobody can promise you any outcomes because of anything you're doing today. Like really and truly none. Not all of our children need to be exceptional, which sounds like such a strange thing to say because all of your children are exceptional. And so therefore, this like they must look exceptional. I remember going on daycare tours with 6-month-olds where we're talking about how we're going to get them to be exceptional in this. They're going to learn this language and they're going to play this instrument and they're going to learn math faster. And none of the data has ever proven out that any of that was significant in any way. Then we want to remember that our children don't need to be shielded from struggle or negative emotions, right? This is as they become closer to that 1 year mark. And if there's any toddler parents out there, as we start to think about like, can my child also handle stress? Yes, Jenny. And like my 12-year-old and my 9-year-old, this is all day long. Is like, you can also handle feeling disappointed, having mommy not be available for 2 seconds, going through a hard moment, rejection, failure. Not only can you handle it, you must handle it. You must handle it, right? Because
Yep.
if your 18-month-old doesn't know that they will survive their tantrum, that is not the way you want to enter the next phase of your life, right? You want your children to know, and even your baby crying right now, guys, your baby crying when you can't get to them for 2 minutes because you are on the toilet, right? This is a real moment where your baby can also handle it. You can get there and you can say, oh my goodness, I am so sorry. You were calling me and I was on the toilet. And yet I am here and you need me and I showed up, and that is okay. We can teach our kids that they will be okay in those moments by reflecting to them that we're okay in those moments. Like, I know Jenny and Maddie know what I'm talking about, but the parental stress of like, oh my God, I didn't do something for my kid is so much worse than the kid stress of being like, oh, that didn't go my way,
Always.
I'll move on.
I will say
Always. Guilt.
going back to work too is like I was my stress projecting onto like the rest of my family of like handing off my child to another caregiver, what was happening, the day, like there was so many uncertainties, right? Of like, will someone do it better than me? And that was something, again, releasing those expectations so that I could mentally like perform the role outside of the home at the time that I needed to do, and then come back in and be mom again. But it was really hard. And like, I was so worried that my daughter was going to have such a stressful experience with this transition. And I think it's important to know a lot of times as moms, like we're clinging on like, oh my gosh, are they going to be okay? Or like, you're okay. Or like, we have to prepare ourselves for like what that looks like for caregivers to step in and, and do so comfortably, because I think like a lot of times our stress projects onto the entire situation. And
Absolutely.
the only point of that story was my daughter was totally fine. The more we like brought her caregiver into the daily fold, and then eventually, like, within a couple days, like I was ready to start leaving the house and like going to the office and all these other things that I was just so worried about that like happened very like naturally with a little bit of planning and intention, but I was so worried about it.
Yeah.
End of the story is it was all okay, and she's fine. Everything's okay. So I think it's like a lot of times we put so much stress on ourselves that projects into whatever situation that could be, that is a little unnecessary. We don't necessarily need that level of it.
Absolutely. And we can teach ourselves through experience because our kids are not like yet there, but we are, to say
Yeah.
like, look, that last time I was worried about all these things. And what I learned is all the things did go wrong. And also we were okay, right? All the things can also be true. So you make a great point, which I think we should just stop and say for a second, Jenny, which is like the idea that your child is going to be more attached to someone else than you is not a thing. Attachment
Nope.
doesn't work that way. You need at least one figure to whom you're attached for a secure attachment. And yet, the more the better. The
The
more
more,
children
The more
that
the
your
better.
children feel like love them and would show up for them, the better. And that's true for your lifespan, right? So the more people I say to my older kids, like, tell me 5 people who would show up for you today, right now. How lucky are you that you have 5, right? That anything that happens, any celebration, any tragedy, you have this many people that would show up for you. That's incredible, right? And so we
Totally.
know that that actually builds a child's capacity. When your child feels loved and secure, they can go away from you, they can explore, they can free up that brain space to actually be learning and making new connections and not worrying about, being well taken care of. So that whole idea that they're going to love somebody more than you just isn't a thing. Let's just like relieve ourselves of that, right? um, and there's no competition, right? Because you'll always be their parent, and that will always matter to them. So if other people do it better than you, I just say those are great things that you should give to other people, right? Like if they'll like allow someone else to brush their teeth, let someone else brush their teeth. What does that need to be the thing that you're holding on to? So whatever it is. So what are some of the things that we are going to do to help sort of get ourselves in check? This is the true self-care. So one thing I love is to schedule time with your children the way you would for someone else. I see everybody's calendar with great time chunks for them to do work and them to have meetings, and not as many to be like, this is bath time. This is bedtime for my kid. This is me going home in the middle of the day to give snuggles. Or if I work from home, like all of us work from home, there are these moments where you say, like, you know what, showing up for my kids in these 5 moments in the day really matter. So I'm going to schedule them into my day the way I would if they were a work meeting. And I'm going to value that time equally to everybody else's demands and expectations of me. I think for me, that has been a game changer. I literally put in my calendar like my kids' names, and it's like that's when I'm not there. And however flexible your employer can be with that, I think that's one way to really get to a place where you feel you have balance, because you feel like there's value in both of your roles, right? Establishing boundaries, so things you can do and things you can't do. Being Practicing in front of the mirror if you have to, those statements about like, I'm so sorry, it's going to take me longer, right? Or like, I'm feeling like I have a lot of things on my plate, so I might need to do that differently, right? What are the kind of things you can say? If you're a person like me and you have a lot of trouble saying no, these might be real statements that you have to figure out. Lose it and forgive yourself. Again, expect the bad days, honor the bad days, give yourself the grace to get to the other side of it, and then start again. There's nothing better than a reset. There's a lot of great hard science on the value of telling yourself, I'm just going to reset, right?
Yep.
And doing that over and over again. You may need to reset 12 times in a day. Like, who cares? Every time you do it, you bring your full intention to doing that moment differently, and you leave behind guilt and shame, which shut down your brain from learning and being able to do anything productive anyway. So you really, get yourself into that space. Ask for help, acknowledge the mess, stop doing this thing to each other where we make everything look so perfect and we won't talk about the things that are messy. Like, let's just stop that. That's my biggest beef with, social media and everything else, is like, could we just stop pretending that you didn't spend 2 hours to make that picture look good? Like, or I love the things where people pan from like, this was the perfect birthday party, like, and then they show you like, and this is the mess that was required
Yeah.
to make this room look like that. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Keeping
It,
it real is the best thing you can do, especially with parents.
Yeah.
yeah, Matt, I love following you along with your little one for all those. Like, there was one a couple weekends ago where you guys were out to lunch or something, and he was like literally on the sidewalk with his little binky, and I there was just such a real moment where you're like, well, apparently he was like kissing the sidewalk, and that's just like, okay, like we're
All
moving on.
right.
You know?
Totally. I want someone to film like the muscling getting them back in the stroller when they don't want to get back in the stroller. But that's actually how it happens. Just in case
Yep.
you were wondering how that's
Yeah.
going to look this bad. Um, Turn off what isn't helping. So we're all big believers. Like, if there are voices in your life that you can turn off, if there are channels you're looking at and people you're following that just don't make you feel good, like, just move on. There's absolutely no reason to keep doing things that don't fill your bucket or feel good or right for you. Find routines. So I think some of our tips that we're going to get to later, and some of why these brands exist, are to help you also just find routines that work for you. Routines make your brain feel safe and secure. When you can predict what's going to come next, you can anticipate it, you can regulate for it. So I tell people all the time, if I don't tell you what you're doing tomorrow, there's an amount of anxiety that just is built into that. If I tell you exactly what you're doing tomorrow, you can prepare. Even if you don't like it, you can prepare. And whenever you feel yourself preparing, you're calling on those executive function skills. You're waking up your prefrontal cortex to say, like, I've got a plan, I've got to strategize, I've got to meet the challenge, right? And all of that brings like just that quiet effect to the noise and the chaos in your brain. That's why babies love routines and patterns, because if you do the same thing over and over again, you begin to anticipate it, right? So that's why you have a bedtime routine, or that's why you have your snuggles that you do the same time every day, or why meals are in the same place. That's all to sort of give us the benefit of that. And then also, of course, make time for you. So don't forget yourself in this equation. Somewhere in here needs to be the things that help you going. This is back to my, like, I only do, for me, it's like 60% in each bucket. I love this quote. I don't do it all. If I'm killing it on a scandal script for work, I'm missing bath and story time. And if I'm at home sewing the Halloween costumes, I'm blowing off a rewrite I was supposed to turn in. If I'm succeeding at one, I'm failing at another. I think it's great to know that this is a thing, right? And I think that's a really important way to sort of say we'll all do the best. So I think that with our incredible brands that we have, like, I'd love to go through just some of the tricks. And again, please put questions in if you have any, but like, what are your guys' diehard things we must practice and do and prepare for before you might be either leaving the home for work or just setting aside hours for work? And Maddie, I'm putting you on the spot first, which is like, how do you start with bottles? If you're not,
Let's
if
talk
you
about
haven't done
bottles.
bottles and you need to start, like, where does that journey begin? And like, bleh.
Bleh. Exactly. It can be bleh sometimes. I think it's really important to prepare yourself. I don't think it's one of those things, and Jenny, you've said it before, you don't think about it, especially if you've had one baby who took bottles, no problem. You don't even think this is going to be an issue. And a week before work, you're like, okay, cool, let's practice with the pumped milk or the formula. They don't want to take it. What do you do? The anxiety and stress that that will induce, and for a lot of women, it can feel like, okay, well, if I'm still breastfeeding, I actually can't go back to work. If it's in person, how do I leave my child starving if they're not taking a bottle? So, one, prepare, try to do it much before that going back to work date kind of creeps up on you. And two, equipping yourself with the tools that will make that transition easier. That's where Emulait comes into play. This is the closest thing to your breast. So if they are breastfeeding, you are going to have a better shot at having them take this bottle, because we've gone to great lengths in the design of the bottle, and there's so many elements factored into this, from the amount of holes, the texture, like it feels like an areola, it feels like a nipple. There's little interior fibers in here that feel like the connective tissue in a muscle. There are so many things, the color, the shape, that trick baby into thinking this is your breast, that even the smartest of babies who are like, I'm not taking that, will be like, hold on, what is this? Is this mom's boob? So I think having the tools to be able to confidently go, okay, I'm able to leave my baby and have them be bottle fed and fed throughout the day while I'm not here is great. I think the other thing as well to think about is it's emotional. Having to stop what you've been doing and breastfeeding your child and give that responsibility to someone else is really emotional. Being able to connect and see yourselves in a product that is now feeding your baby takes some of that anxiety and stress away from you, because you're like, okay, well, at least they're getting something kind of close to me. I can see a little bit of myself in that bottle, and it's that emotional connection that you have between the act of obviously breastfeeding your child and then having to step away and give that responsibility to someone else. So those are my tips. And have also, if you're struggling, have someone else give the bottle.
Yes.
Don't be in the room. Have someone else do it. Make sure, if they are only breastfeeding, make sure it be breast milk. Don't try to introduce formula or something different first time around, because now they're going to associate the bottle with formula if they didn't like formula and go, I hate that. And then maybe you'll get an aversion to bottles. So do what they're used to. If they're on formula, then continue with that. If they're breastfeeding, do breast milk. Make sure it's heated to a warm temperature. Have somebody else give it. All these little things. Also, don't be discouraged if they don't take to it immediately. It is a process for a lot of babies and a lot of parents, and having the milk, even just touching the nipple and getting them used to that and feeling in their mouth. And the second they show any disinterest or aversion, you pull away. I'm hearing you, I'm understanding you, I'm not forcing this. So that's why when we talk about time and preparing, I'd give it time. I'd give it 6 weeks before you're even thinking about going back to work. So you have the ability to kind of slowly build up to accepting a bottle.
And even if you've been using other bottles, you can switch to an Emulait bottle now
Absolutely.
anyway,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely. And if you are, I would recommend it, because the benefits that your baby's getting orally from using this bottle is so much better than a regular bottle. And there isn't the issue of overfeeding. Like regular bottles, it's basically like they're chugging milk
The
back.
guzzle.
Here,
Guzzle.
it's a lot,
Yes.
the guzzle, exactly. Here, it's a lot slower flow that you're able to really mimic that breastfeeding experience.
Great. And
And
then
on,
there's pumping.
yeah,
I was going to say, Jenny, I have said to you so many times, but like I was an overproducer. Breastfeeding was like on the breast was super hard for me because of my flow, because like my poor babies were like, blown
ground,
a,
yeah.
like a fire hydrant. Like someone opened the fire hydrant on a poor, small, defenseless creature. And so I just think pumping is like gets so much negative information related to pumping. And I was like, pumping saved my life, and having storage like Leche available would have changed my life, just in pumping. Can you talk a little bit about like how you start that transition if you're not a pumper, or if you are already a pumper, how you start thinking about both using Leche and in general storage and milk and all things?
Yeah, and I think, for because I was a pumper, I had to, because again, I had so much of a supply. I knew I wanted to stockpile it. I knew I wanted to save that for when I did return to work. But there's so many things that you're not thinking about, like how I'm going to be pumping at work and what does that look like. And to be honest, in the early days of when I was pumping with my first child, pumps looked very different.
Yeah.
You were sort of attached to a wall. I can remember being in the first office that I was going back to, I was kind of stuck in the bathroom with like my, pump attached to the wall. Now pumps have come such a long way. There are even, just collector cups, which, collect as like the letdown is happening, and they really don't require anything else. So, like there's no battery, there's no plugs, there's no sound, there's no noise. So there's so many different ways now that moms can collect and save milk as a stockpile. We had, one customer that collected over, I think, like 1,000 ounces with just her like a collector, while she was nursing. So she didn't even like, pump per se. She was just
Yeah.
collecting excess. And one of the things that we've really strived to do as a company is help moms feel like everything that they're putting so much into their baby, their feeding journey, becoming a mother, like none of that should be wasted, right? So let's make the best use of it, whether you are an oversupplier, whether you're making just enough and maybe you're just collecting that little bit of excess, or whether it's something that you're truly trying to like, up your supply to, exclusively breastfeed or combo feed your baby. Like there is no right combination. It's whatever works for you physically, mentally, and as a family. Like you have to, nutritionally for your baby. So we don't promote one way or the other. Obviously, a lot of our customers are already making a lot, but what our service does is allows moms to have greater convenience and flexibility. I can't tell you how unprepared I was. Like Instagram wasn't crazy overflowing, no pun intended there, with like, pumping resources and IBCLCs and all the things that moms have access to now, right? As you're scrolling through your phone, as you're sitting there pumping, like you don't have the same amount of resources that now we now have. So in creating this service, we really wanted to offer moms greater flexibility and convenience so that caregivers could step in. The instructions, once you turn your milk into powder, are very consistent with almost like formula feeding. So you're just taking, your scoops of leche, which is your freeze-dried breast milk, adding it to water in a very intuitive way with reconstitution instructions on the back. So whoever, whether it's grandma or grandpa or nanny or daycare center or friend or aunt or whoever is stepping in to help with on your feeding journey, it's super clear for them. So the stress is then relieved from you, whether you're in an emergency situation where you need one of your little on the go packets. You forgot to bring milk to daycare. You might have 2 little leche packets in your glove box, and you don't have to worry about bringing frozen or liquid milk to daycare. So all of these different things that we know can help, again, that mental load for moms, right? When you are in a position where you're producing milk and storing milk, you have this milk management problem on your
Oh,
hand,
yeah,
right?
it's such a
It's like
problem.
pump first? When did I pump this? How much is it? I've got to use this first. I got to rotate it through my fridge or my freezer. I've got to, freeze this right away. Like it can be a lot. So if we can alleviate some of those pain points for moms and helping bring caregivers into the journey quicker, in a way that, helps alleviate some of the stress for her, then that's a win for us. If we're able to give her the convenience on her daily, as she's organizing her day, throw a couple of Leche Premier sachets in there, she's good to go. She's off on the play dates, she's at the park, whatever. Great. And then I think the last thing too that we don't think about is like a lot of women stockpile their freezer thinking like baby is just going to take this right away.
Yeah.
And Maddie and I, you and I have talked about this a lot too, but that's not always the case. You really have to try these things. A lot of times we see moms who have stockpiled their freezer. They have this beautiful freezer stash. They're so proud of it. And then baby won't take the milk. And a lot of times it can be lipase, and lipase is a naturally occurring enzyme in mom's milk. It's in all of mom's milk. Some moms have overactive lipase, and it's something I just wish more moms, I had a little touch of it here and there with some of my kids. But I wish more moms tested their milk prior to freezing it or with their babies, because it can taste soapy or metallic or fishy or just almost rancid, but it's not. And so a lot of the times babies will refuse that milk. One of the wonderful things that we're learning about freeze drying is that freeze drying actually neutralizes the overactive lipase enzyme. So for moms who maybe have stockpiled this freezer and then they're like, oh my gosh, my baby won't do this, I have to turn to formula, or I need another alternative source, or I can't go back to work because I have to feed them. This is a really great solution. And 9 times out of 10, it works. And, the lipase issue is either drastically improved or resolved, which is amazing. So, just another thing of like trying before you're like, waking up the next day to hand your baby off to somebody to go to the office. Like you really have to prepare as you did for like your birth plan and your motherhood journey and everything else. Like come prepared so that you feel more confident and that load is sort of lifted off your shoulders.
It's so true. And there are just like so many options, and you don't know. I love what you said about like there's no one right way, because I think when you're talking about feeding, especially, which is it feels like your primary job. Like you were put on this earth to figure out how to feed your baby, right? And so like when we're talking about like bottles and pumping and storage and all these things, it feels like it's the most important decision you're going to make and you don't want to get it wrong. And the real answer is like it has to work for you and your baby. And not every mom is the same. Not every set of boobs is the same. Not all our production is the same. And not all our babies are the same.
Exactly.
Maddie, you have a question in here from Bianca. So like the bottle and nipple, does it change as you're breastfeeding? Because it's so similar to the breastfeeding journey. Like, are there things you have to change with upgrading nipples or changing bottles, or is it the same all the way through?
We get this question a lot of when should I scan? Because that we have pregnant moms and we have postpartum moms, and as we know, our nipples change drastically throughout that whole period.
I'm still waiting for my nipples to recover. Is that something I should scan for?
I don't know if they'll ever be the same.
I'm not sure.
And it's
TMI for the top. Yeah.
But I think my tips are always, if you are pregnant, absolutely scan. Don't be hesitating. Okay, wait, I'm going to wait a little bit longer till my baby's bottle feeding, because you want to prep with these. And if it's in terms of shade, baby isn't going to go, okay, mom, you've gone from this to this, so now I'm rejecting this one because it's slightly darker. In terms of shape, obviously our nipples really do change in shape and they do stretch. What is incredible is our bottles, like the amount of stretch that there is in this. Really don't get too worked up if you're a size shape 3 and then a shape 4 and go, okay, I need to now switch up all my bottles because now I'm a tiny bit bigger. The bottle is able to accommodate for this change. We do, however, recommend replacing your nipples every 3 to 6 months anyway. So if it is something, if I scan, just had the baby, introduced a bottle, and then I scan again and I realize my nipples have shrunk or increased in size, great. When you go to repurchase nipples, we sell them as 2-packs. Repurchase in a different size. Absolutely no problem. And if you're someone who does have a little bit of stress and anxiety about this and you do want options, you can always order them in one size and order different nipple sizes. Have some backup options. Don't be afraid to test it as well. Maybe your baby will like a smaller shape versus and I'm sorry the background here is not doing
No,
the
no,
best job of showing
it's
this, but
beautiful. Yeah.
the two there we can see the two different sizes. Maybe they'll have a preference. Order both. Order a size 1 and a size 4, and see which one they're liking a little bit more.
Great. And Jenny, how long does the shipping like turnaround time take for storage to getting the Leche packets back?
So once you place your order, the kits are usually fulfilled same week. You get your kit. We recommend freezing your ice bricks that we send with your kit 48 hours prior to shipment. So there's a little bit of preparation for this, but processing on our side is about 2 to 3 weeks. So plan ahead, but also know that we have a very quick turnaround. It's not like months and months of waiting. There's no wait list, which is awesome. But if you also need something rush order, we can always accommodate those requests as well.
Great. And you don't have to have like 6 deep freezers in your garage
No,
trying to figure out how to
no,
keep all the bags standing upright. That for me, the bag storage was just like so overwhelming and all
we
the things.
yeah, we hit a point in I remember this with my second. My husband was like, "Do we get to keep food in our freezer anymore?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. Like, what am I doing with this? I've already donated milk. I've already given it to friends,
Totally.
and we've used what we could. And now, like, I would never throw this away. Like, you're nuts." So I was like, "The vegetables and popsicles will have to wait. Like, we'll
Oh, you have to
just
get a whole
no
nother
more
freezer. A whole
sorry."
nother freezer. Chicken nuggets and popsicles, like there's another freezer for them. So,
Yeah, I mean, and
I
it really does take something that takes up so much room in your freezer, especially for women who live in like New York, families in like New York, or maybe have, we were never going to get a second freezer. So,
in New York City, my deep freezer full of breast milk was in my living room. Guys,
yeah,
in my living, it's like a central piece of furniture in a talk about a well
Love
designed
it.
living room.
I bet
Where
it
do
was
you,
nice. I
where
bet
are
it
you going to move enough furniture to have a deep freezer in your living room? Like such a New York City problem, but you know what? It's true. One more question. Felicia's asking, can I send frozen milk in non-leche bags, like regular pumping bags?
absolutely. It's all should be frozen to coming to us. Like we require that you have them frozen. And you can use any pumping bags that you like. We provide you with some additional ones in your kit just to kind of restock your supply once you've sent us yours, but you can use any standard freezer bags to send your milk into us.
Awesome. Awesome. So I know we're at time. I'm just going to quickly say childcare arrangement must be practiced. We alluded to that before, but you want to leave yourself some days if someone's coming into your home or you're dropping off your baby to get good at that. Talk about flexible work arrangements. We're all here to encourage you to be able to do that. My favorite tip is to pick your outfits for the whole week on a Sunday night because it's just so hard every morning, I think, getting a baby ready, and if you're getting out of the house, to remember which pants still fit you and what's happening with
And
the
try
nursing
those
home.
on. Try them all on. Oh my
Yes,
gosh.
try them all on, lay them all out. You must try everything on for
Yeah,
a really long time, guys. You have to try everything on. You can't predict.
yeah.
Um, and then, there's great data about going back on a Thursday or checking your emails before, but like really easing yourself in as best as you can. For any more information on how we can support you and all your things, we know that there is so much struggle. All of our brands are available to help you. And if you want more tips about the emotional, transition and what you're learning about baby and that connection, please think about joining another talk in the future. We're doing them all the time at Cooper, and we've got such great partners like Maddie and Jenny who are here to make it all happen.
Oh, you're amazing. I mean, like, I wish we had Cooper when I was like in the thick of it, going back to work, because this is like, so, a lot of women don't talk about this. There's not a platform to really connect and talk about all this and share the stress and everything else going on. So, kudos to Cooper for organizing this and helping moms feel just a little bit more prepared and going back to work.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. This
I
was so fun.
I totally agree. I don't want them to miss out on our discounts as well
Oh,
on
yes.
the last page. So we do
Oh,
obviously
sorry,
have.
sorry, sorry. I didn't put the discount page up. Oh,
You're
goodness.
fine. I got you guys.
We're going to be emailing everybody, and anybody can find discount. Wait, now my thing isn't moving. There we go. Okay. Thank you, Maddie.
Here we are. Just because obviously
Good businesswoman over there.
no, but I will be using all three of these brands postpartum and transitioning back to work, and I know how useful it is. So I do want them to be able to get their discounts
Yes.
if they're considering trying any of us out.
Get your
Like,
discounts.
yep.
And we'll also have a downloadable link with all of these on there as well. So when you
And
find this
Mary,
recording.
I have our contact information there too. If anybody has questions, they can always come to us or come through you as well. So
Absolutely.
we are always available. And one of the things that we love about our community is just, access to Trish and I as co-founders, as moms. Our co-founder Trish is an IBCLC. We have, a team of medical professionals too that are always available. So please reach out to us. We love to answer your questions and we love to hear from you.
Yay.
Absolutely.
So we're all very accessible. You can find us all. And if you're catching this talk as a recording, you should be able to download information as well. And thank you for being here. And thank you, ladies, for being here.
Thank you. It was such an important conversation. I feel like I'm so equipped to go back to work. I haven't taken the maternity leave yet, and I'm like ready to go.
I was going to say, maybe give yourself like a minute before you
Yeah.
have to come back. A minute
Take
to
a
be off
breathe
before you have to come back.
and then apply the tools.
Just a minute. Just a minute. Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you so much, everybody, for joining.
Thank you.